So this hat pattern comes in several different sizes and options for the brim. You can either choose to do one that is a flip up brim, or you can do one that's not. And I love the way these stitches just kind of melt into the shorter brim style as well. You can see I've got a few examples here from newborn to baby to adult. These ones I did without the flip up brim. Then I've got some with that flip up brim. It's really just personal preference if you want that extra warmth around the ears and that look, or if you just prefer the more straight lined beanie. For today's project, you will need a size 5mm crochet hook, which is also an H size, a tapestry needle to weave in those ends, scissors to cut them, and I always recommend when trying a new pattern to have some stitch markers nearby. Optional, pom-poms. If you want to place a pom-pom on top, you can, or not. Personal preference on that as well. For these hats, I have used the Color Theory yarn by Lion Brand. This is a worsted weight yarn. It comes in 246 yards per ball. I did much of the collection in this moonbeam color, but today on camera for this hat, so we can see it, I'm going to be using this tourmaline. I'm not even sure if I said that right, but this is a great almost aqua color that's really, really pretty, and I think will be more visible. I'm going to be making the adult size hat. I'm going to be doing the adult small. And for this video today, I will be working the brim like the fold up brim. So if you want to do this brim instead of the fold up brim, you're just going to be working less stitches when we get to that brim area. But for the video today, I'm going to be doing the instructions for this fold up brim, and the only difference is it just has more stitches. So we're going to start with more chains, and we're going to be working more brim stitches, but you can do either way, and the pattern gives you stitch counts for either. So let's go ahead and jump right in. For the adult size small hat today, we're going to start with a slip knot and place that on our hook. And then this is going to be for the one that has the flip up brim. So we are going to chain 49. Now, if you prefer to do this as foundation single crochets instead of doing these chain stitches, you can start your first row with a foundation single crochet count of 48. Now, after chaining 49 stitches, we have one turning chain, so I like to tighten that down a little bit. And then we're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook and single crochet in all remaining stitches across. This will bring our stitch count to 48 single crochet stitches for row 1. Now, after row 1, we have 48 single crochet stitches, and we're going to turn our work and then chain 1. And that's our turning chain. That does not count as a stitch from here on out. And then for this row 2, we are going to be single crocheting in the back loop only. Now, if you've never worked in the back loop, if you look at the top of your stitches, there's a V here. And this first part of the V that's closest to you is the front loop, and the back part is what's called the back loop. So when we enter our stitch, we're only going to be going through that back part of that V. And that's what's going to make this design happen by working in the back loop only for row 2. So we're simply going to single crochet. We're not changing the stitch count of this hat from here on out, but for row 2, we're going to single crochet in the back loop only all the way across. And now for row 3, we're going to turn our work and start with a chain 1. And in the first 4 stitches of this row, we will single crochet into the back loop only. This is going to be the top of the hat where we will join it. And by working it this way, it makes the top sit a little bit better when we join and cinch together the top. So we have single crocheted 4 in the back loop only. And now we're going to be doing some unique puff stitches. These do not need to be in the back loop only. We're going to be working through both loops here. We're going to skip the next stitch and insert our hook into the next and do a single crochet. So we've skipped one and single crocheted in the next. Now we're going to be working back to our skip stitch. So we're going to yarn over, insert into the skip stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, insert that skip stitch again, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now we have 5 loops on the hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through 4 of them. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through the last 2. And that's our puff stitch. Now this one's not like puffy as you could go with puff stitches. This is kind of a modified one, but I don't want it to be too thick. I don't want it to be too heavy. So that's how we'll be working them from here on out. We're going to be repeating this all the way across until we get to the last 14 stitches of this row. So we will skip the next stitch, insert into the next and do a single crochet, go back to that skip stitch and do that puff stitch. And that's our repeat all the way across. Skip one, single crochet into the next, go back to the skip stitch and do that puff stitch. We're going to work those repeats until we get to the last 14 stitches of this row. And now that we are at the last 14 stitches of this row, we are simply going to single crochet in the back loop only for the remaining 14 stitches. And this is creating the fold up brim for this beanie. Now that we have completed round 3, we're going to turn our work and chain 1. And in the back loop only for the very first 14 stitches, we are going to single crochet. So single crochet the first 14 stitches of this row in the back loop only. And remember, if you're doing the modified shorter brim, it's just going to be less stitches for the brim part, but that's the only difference. Now we're back to the section where we're going to be working those puff stitches until we get to the last 4 stitches of the row. So we're going to start by skipping the next stitch and working a single crochet into the next, and then going back to that skip stitch and working that puff stitch. Skip the next and single crochet in the next, go back to that skip stitch and work that puff stitch. This is where it really starts to create that beautiful puff design going on here. And so I'm going to repeat that until I get to the last 4 stitches of row 4. And now that we're at the last 4 stitches of the row, we are going to single crochet into the back loop only of those last 4 stitches of row 4. And now we're going to turn our work and do row 5. Now row 5, 6, 7, and 8 will be our 4-row repeat for this hat. It's doing exactly pretty much what we did before, but I just want to review that with you really quick because row 1 was our foundation row, and this one's going to be worked as row 5. So I've chained 1, and in the back loop only, I'm going to single crochet in every single stitch across. So we're not changing any stitch counts. Once again, that stays the same. But for row 5 and for row 6, we are simply going to single crochet in the back loop only for every single stitch across. So I'm going to go ahead and complete row 5 and row 6 and then come on back since they're just single crocheting in that back loop only for each stitch. Now that we have done rows 5 and 6, we're ready to do rows 7 and 8. And rows 7 and 8 are an exact repeat of rows 3 and 4. So I'm going to complete that off camera and then we'll talk about the repeats, but we're just repeating rows 3 and 4 for rows 7 and 8. I will also mention that this does have a right side and wrong side. Right now we're looking at the right side because we are looking at just completing row 6, which is an even row. So the even rows are the right side of work and the odd rows are the wrong side of work. I just like the way this side looks with the single crochet in the back loop only popping, and it looks quite nice the way it flows into that brim. So I'm going to go ahead and do rows 7 and 8 off camera, which are once again a repeat of 3 and 4, and then come on back. So now I've completed rows 7 through 8, and our repeat from here on out is rows 5 through 8. So you're doing those 2 rows of single crochet in the back loop only, and then the rows of the puff stitches while also working the single crochets in the back loop only for the brim and the top part of the hat. So that 4-row repeat, we will do that 11 more times, which means we have a total of 13 repeats for the size small for this adult size hat. Now, once you get to that point, we will be seaming, but I always say stop and check your head measurement because you can always change the width of this hat by working fewer or more rows, sorry, in the 4-row repeat. So once you get to the point of the repeats, it's always a good idea to take your own head measurement. We do want a negative ease on hats, but to double check the measurements for the fit for the person you're making it for. I'm going to finish those repeats until I have a total of 13, so 11 more, and then I'll come on back. Now that we have all of our rows done, it's time for us to go ahead and join this. This is the right side of the fabric that we're looking at right now. And that's where we're going to have facing us, and then we're going to fold in each side, and this is where we're going to join. The wrong side will be facing us when we join once we fold those together. Now I'm joining these sides together, and I'm going to start with a chain 1. And then I'm going to work through the back loop of the row that is closest to me. So this is this side, this is the first side. And then I'm going to go through both loops. I like to grab a bit more from this other side from our very first row and yarn over and pull through all the loops and stitches on the hook. And so then we'll just keep doing that all the way down, go through the back loop, grab that first stitch, yarn over, and pull through everything. And this is just slip stitching these edges together with the wrong side facing us. And then when we flip it inside out, it'll look great on the right side. So this seam that we're seeing here will be on the inside of the hat. So I'm just going to keep doing this all the way down. Now, after working the last stitch, all the stitches have been joined, and you have two options here to finish this off. We need to close up the top part of this hat. Now you can fasten off and rejoin your yarn over here. That's option 1. Or you can go ahead and cut a longer piece of thread. Grab my scissors here and then grab your yarn needle. And what we will do is we will stitch our string all the way up. So we're just going to move by weaving through the inside of our hat so that we have a strand at the top to close that top. So I'm going to make the bottom of this hat look nice by just joining those raw edges together because it kind of bothers. I'm a perfectionist. And when I just do a little bit of a mock stitch here, it makes it look a little bit nicer. And then we are going to just weave through our seam all the way up to the other side. And that way our hat will be ready to close the top and we'll have a strand there. And I'm also going to show you how to secure this strand when you get to the top because we don't want it to be pulling this whole strand when we cinch the top closed. Now that we are at the top of this, if you chose to weave your yarn end all the way through, I'm going to loop through a couple times just on this top edge. And that way when I start to pull, it's not going to pull my string that I gently wove through there. It's not going to do anything at all. It's just going to pull on this point. So now we can go ahead and flip our hat to the other side so that we have the right side facing. And then grab that yarn needle. And we are going to be weaving through the top of this hat. Now the way I like to do is I don't like to weave on every single row. I just kind of do the points where there seems to be a point on this hat. So about every 2 rows. And I'm just going to weave my end all the way around through those points. And this will help us close the top of this hat. Now that we've gone all the way around, it's time for us to just simply pull this circle closed. So all we have to do is just take that strand and we're simply going to pull it tight, and that will help us close the top of this hat. And then the other thing you can do is weave through a couple more times. I always like to do this not only to secure it so it doesn't come undone, but to really get that as tight as possible. If you're putting a pom-pom on it, it's not as critical to make sure that that hole's completely gone, but I like to just kind of work my strand around, maybe not through all the stitches, but a few of the stitches, and that helps it secure it even more. And then I'll go around a couple times and then I'll reverse my direction and go around the other way as well, just really securing that top so nothing ever happens to it that it would happen to come undone. Once you feel like you've gotten your hat secure enough, you can weave in the end and you can go ahead and fasten off. And then the crochet portion of your hat is done. Now we can go ahead and flip up that brim, and if you like it as is, you can go ahead and wear your hat. If you love pom-poms, you can place a pom-pom on top. And once again, we did the folded brim, but there's also a version in the instructions to do a brim that's not folded, that's much shorter. It just depends on what style that you like. Thank you so much for joining me in making this winter wheat hat. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back for more fun videos soon.